What if I told you that one day a train could run from here, that's the Islamabad-Margila station, through Iran all the way up to Istanbul? That's 6,500 kilometers of track, and the route exists. It's called the Tehran-Istanbul-Islamabad line, and the agreements have been made. All that's left now is a peace deal that Islamabad is working hard towards. So on today's episode, we're going to talk about what Pakistan's strategic location means after a peace deal is signed and what else it could gain once this war is actually over. So you're probably thinking that I'm getting ahead of myself, but stay with me. Okay, so Pakistan just brokered a ceasefire between the US and Iran, and hopefully we're close to a peace deal. And everyone's talking about Pakistan's diplomatic supremacy at play because it managed to host the first direct talks between the US and Iran since 1979. But I won't get into that. I won't bore you with that because we've done that enough, because I think that there's a much bigger story underneath all of that. I actually want to start thinking ahead because for the first time in decades, Pakistan is in a position to leverage the respect that it has gained internationally. So on today's dossier, here's what I want to know. What does Pakistan actually gain from being the broker of the most important peace deal of the decade? What changes will we see on ground? The ports, the pacts, the pipelines, what opens, what gets built, and what becomes possible that wasn't before? Okay, so to answer that, we have to understand something that most people in a Western-centric world, and honestly, most people in Pakistan itself, don't really think about. Look at this. This is Baluchistan. Most people don't know this, but it covers 44% of Pakistan's entire land area. That's nearly half of the country. It has 800 kilometers of coastline of the Arabian Sea, and it has the country's largest reserves of natural gas, copper, gold, and coal. And it has a border with Iran and Afghanistan. And here's the thing that makes this really important right now. Every single overland corridor in Pakistan's trade story runs through Baluchistan. On April 25, 2026, Pakistan issued a regulatory order that opened 6 of these routes to Iranian cargo. The shortest route from Gwadar to the Iranian border at Gwadar is 89 kilometers. That's only 2 to 3 hours by truck. Before this order, the alternative route from Karachi took 16 to 18 hours and cost more than twice as much. And right here at the corner of this map is Gwadar. This is the port that China built under CPEC, and it's $60+ billion of Chinese investment in a network of roads, railways, and pipelines connecting China's western interior to the Arabian Sea. For China, this port means access to Gulf oil without passing through the waters that the US Navy controls. Just a few days ago, Xi Jinping and Pakistan's Prime Minister formally declared Gwadar a regional connectivity hub. Now let's get back to the trains. On the other side of the Taftan border, Iran has a fully functioning national rail network. Iran's network connects to Turkey, Turkey's network connects to Europe and to Iraq and the Middle East. The whole thing is called the ITI corridor, Istanbul-Tehran-Islamabad, and it's 6,500 kilometers of track that already physically exists. But of course, there's a problem. The security problem in Baluchistan. And we'll get to that in a bit once I'm done telling you about the ITI. So the ITI was suspended in 2012, but in December 2025, Pakistan and Iran agreed to restart it. Pakistan's railways minister sat down with the Iranian ambassador in May of this year to advance freight plans on the Taftan-Zaidan section as well.
Last year, we were having a high-level meeting of the ECO framework, under which we have agreed with Turkey and Iran that we will revive this train as soon as possible. Currently, we have completed all the modalities for its revival. This whole connectivity primarily depends on the quality of the infrastructure that we have. We know that the infrastructure in Iran and Turkey is good enough, but on our part, especially from Saqqar to Taftan, we have this very old line which would require a lot of improvement and upgradation. So we have a plan whereby we intend to start work on this upgradation, not only to cover the regional traffic for the European markets, but at the same time we have a huge mineral area in the Chaghi region of Baluchistan. So for evacuation of those minerals, this line is also very important. So we have planned, we have allocated resources, and we intend to start work next year. And by 2028, we should be in a position whereby this would be an upgraded ML3. We call basically it as an ML3. And once this is done, we believe that that would create a huge capacity for facilitating all the regional traffic coming not only from the European markets, but even it would also have very effective connectivity with the Central Asian republics and beyond.
Now, think about what that means. A Pakistani mango exporter could put goods on a train in Islamabad and have them delivered to Istanbul in days, not weeks, without a shipping container, without the Suez Canal, without the Strait of Hormuz. But here's where this story gets better and even more interesting. Sure, Pakistan is at the center of diplomacy at the moment, but there's a reason that the world is not hesitating to admit Pakistan's victory, because this isn't just a Pakistan story. It's actually much bigger than that. There's a British historian named Peter Frankopan. He wrote a book in 2015 called The Silk Roads. And his argument is simple if you know your history. He says that the idea that Europe is at the center of civilization, that all the important things happen there, is a fairly recent invention. For most of human history, the center of the world was the corridor of land running from Persia through Central Asia to China. That's where empires rose and fell, and that's where the ideas and goods that built every major civilization actually moved. He calls it the world's central nervous system. What the last 500 years of Western dominance actually was, he says, is the exception, not the rule. And we actually had a chance to speak with him as well.
Well, a lot depends on exactly what a peace deal looks like and what it says. There are lots of different variations around how long it's going to last. That's number one. Number two, whether this means relief on sanctions that have been significant for Iran for many, many decades. And look, the challenge for Pakistan, as we've spoken about before, is that Pakistan's neighborhood is a tricky one. You know, you have long-term rivalry with India to the east. You have Afghanistan and the ways in which Afghanistan's developed over the last, again, 50, 60 years. You've got a complicated relationship with China, not just because of CPEC, but because China has opportunities and challenges that are very carefully balanced. And then, of course, your other major neighbor is Iran. So in the short term, since 28th of February, there have been lots of opportunities for Pakistan, because Pakistan's future always requires negotiating with its complexities with its neighbors. And I guess in the short term, you can see this has given Pakistan lots of boosts. So, for example, the port of Gwadar last year loaded only about 8,000 containers in total. And in the month of April, it loaded more than that just in 30 days, because there's a need to find new ways of finding routes into Iran. Now, if Hormuz opens up again, most people expect that the world will go back to normal. And some of those big, heavy investments that you mentioned, Ayesha, of railways, they take a long time to build and they're quite expensive. Those may suddenly look redundant if there's a global peace deal which allows everybody to get on with each other over the long term. You know, Pakistan's challenge, I think, and opportunity is to make sure it has diversification, that it's got lots of options. Because when you're dealing with complicated neighbours and relations with complicated neighbours, which will, you know, that's just how the luck of the draw, then having the most options you have is important. And so from Pakistan's point of view, the first one is about understanding the country's own geography and around how difficult it is to ship goods from the interior. Pakistan is a corridor that connects it to Central Asia, to China and beyond, and to work out what are the best long-term investments that will pay dividends. And it can be tempting to build infrastructure and facilities that are expensive and don't get used too much. You know, Gwadar, the port, is equipped to do many, many times more logistical capabilities than it's currently being used for. But this represents an opportunity, I think, in Pakistan to think about what some of these big long-term challenges look like.
And then in 2018, he wrote a follow-up called The New Silk Roads, and he basically pointed out all that's being built right now. He was basically saying that the central nervous system is waking up again. That was 2018. Today, the Belt and Road Initiative, as in the new Silk Road itself, is the largest infrastructure program in human history. 2025 was the highest BRI engagement here on record, $128.4 billion in construction contracts alone, an 81% jump on 2024, bringing cumulative BRI engagement since 2013 to $1.399 trillion. Since 2013, China has committed over $1.5 trillion across 150 countries. That's 2/3 of the world's entire population. And Gwadar is its most strategically critical node because it is the only point where all of that investment reaches warm water.
So one of the things that China has pushed through the Belt and Road Initiative is trying to say, look, there must be ways of being able to cooperate economically without having political alliances or without trying to push each other to have the same political system. This just this last weekend, there's been a meeting of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization in Bishkek, where Pakistan's Interior Minister Saeed Moshin Naqvi has been there in conversation with, amongst others, Iran's Interior Minister to think about how can trade be boosted. And these two gentlemen have agreed that trade will more than treble between Iran and Pakistan. That's quite an ambitious target. I suppose you could look at it another way, which is that current trade between Iran and Pakistan is $3 billion, which sounds like a lot to you and me, but that doesn't sound like a lot to Elon Musk and his personal fortune. That doesn't sound like a lot to to Apple, a company valued at 100 times that level. So it's that new world order that's being built is how do people find ways to cooperate in a new emerging world.
China has one vulnerability that keeps its strategists up at night. That 80% of its energy imports travel through a single strait that the US Navy effectively controls. Gwadar solves that problem. A pipeline and a road from here to Xinjiang cuts that journey by thousands of kilometers and removes the choke point entirely. And that's how the $62 billion project makes a lot more sense.
BRI means lots of different things to lots of different people, but it doesn't have to be about a new Chinese-led order. It's about how does China use its financial muscles, its industry, to help other countries develop high levels of industrial growth that have made China's economy multiply by 18 times in the last 20 years. And if that could happen in the case of Pakistan, you'd be sitting on a golden throne, Ayesha, talking to me while you're flying away on your private jet afterwards. If Pakistan's economy could do something similar, it would be a miracle.
Now, when you zoom out and look at all of this at once, the BRI, the railway revival, the corridor orders, the alliances forming, the peace deal being brokered, it's the same picture that all these historians were all describing from different angles. The world's center of gravity is moving, and Pakistan, even if just by luck, is sitting right at the pivot point. Now, there are two more pieces to this picture that most people aren't connecting to the peace deal story. The first is energy. Pakistan imports more than $15 billion of oil per year. That's 25% of everything it imports. Every time the Gulf gets unstable, Pakistan's economy gets hit through energy prices, through inflation, through the cost of everything from transport to fertilizer, all the way up to groceries. A stable Gulf and an open Iran changes that equation dramatically. Iran holds the world's second largest natural gas reserves, and according to official estimates, lifting sanctions on oil sales alone could generate $10 billion in 60 days. And there's a gas pipeline, the Iran-Pakistan pipeline, that has been planned for decades and, of course, blocked by sanctions. So if sanctions are lifted, Pakistani homes and factories could be heating and running on Iranian gas within years.
Let's see if the war in the Gulf ends and between the United States and Iran, then I do sense that there'll be considerable economic activity both with Iran that we can benefit from and also with the Gulf countries as a whole. And even with the US, that we have seen a resurge of goodwill between the two countries, there will be prospects for the US to invest in Pakistan, particularly in the energy domain, and also in mineral sector. But for all that benefit, if you want to really benefit from that, then I would say that you need your absorption capacity to go up. What does that mean? That means that your procedures and processes should be simplified. There should be no more bureaucratic hurdles or red tape. I would say that with greater confidence as a state, even your domestic investors will be encouraged to invest in Pakistan.
The second piece is the security architecture. In September 2025, Saudi Arabia and Pakistan signed what's essentially a mutual defense pact. The language is a lot like NATO's Article 5, that an attack on Saudi Arabia is an attack on Pakistan and vice versa. Earlier this year, there were talks of the possibility of Turkey joining this pact as well. Pakistan's defense minister said Qatar could be next. And in its most expansive form, the vision being floated in some quarters also includes Iran.
I would not like to use the term Islamic NATO. I think even NATO itself is now under serious threat because of the rupture in the transatlantic alliance. But I do see a greater keenness among the like-minded countries from the Muslim world to link up with each other for collective security. This whole concept of collective security or indivisible security is very attractive for all those countries which have faced aggression of one sort or the other. Iran, for example, has already entered into a rapprochement with Saudi Arabia some 3 years ago, and would be probably interested in signing some kind of non-aggression pact. I do see a new security architecture coming up in the region, which will borrow from the same principles that are enunciated in China's global security initiative. Essentially, respect for each other's sovereignty and territorial integrity. However, there'll be two hurdles to that. One, the United States for years and decades had provided security umbrella to these Gulf countries, and it will not be easy for them to take out all their 11 bases from this region. Secondly, Israel will remain a spoiler, as currently also, as you can see, that Israel is not allowing the war to end, and they keep instigating war, more so in Lebanon these days. So that will remain a hurdle. So it's going to be a somewhat longish process, but in the medium term to long term, I do see a regional architecture coming up for common security and collective security.
But I want to be straight with you about two things, because I think that they're vital to this conversation. First, the corridors we've been describing run through Baluchistan, and Baluchistan has a serious problem. On May 24th, a suicide car bomb killed 47 people beside a train in Quetta. The BLA, the subgroup behind most of these attacks, has been specifically and deliberately targeting railway and corridor infrastructure. Their argument is that these corridors extract wealth from Baluchistan without benefiting the people who live there.
Because unless there is security, there is absolutely no way any country will invest in Pakistan's in that big a manner. Now there are huge opportunities because Gwadar is opening up to business and the shortest route from Gwadar to Kashgar in western China is through Baluchistan. And I remember when CPAC was announced, there was a whole debate, what route will we follow? Will it be eastern, middle, or central, or the western route? And the people from Baluchistan and KPK were insisting that it should be western route. And the government agreed, but unless there is security, this western route cannot be optimally used, and therefore extremely important for us to find ways, not just through kinetic means to control the violence, but also through political means to ensure that the violence does not erupt to begin with. That's absolutely critical, yeah.
Pakistan says India has also been funding, arming, and providing logistical support to the BLA, which is designated a terrorist organization by several countries. India publicly denies any involvement, but Pakistan's intelligence agencies have repeatedly presented evidence that Indian handlers have exploited genuine Baloch grievances to destabilize the region and specifically to undermine CPEC. That's one problem. The second one is Afghanistan. Almost every route connecting Pakistan to Central Asia runs through the Afghan territory. Right now, Pakistan and Afghanistan are in an active conflict. The Trans-Afghan Railway, a $6 billion project that would cut transit times by 5 days, is frozen. The TAPI gas pipeline is blocked, and until that conflict is resolved, Pakistan's pivot is partial. The Central Asian prize, which is actually bigger than the Iran corridor, is out of reach until then.
Currently, like we have through railways, we have this is the main corridor through which we are connected to the Central Asian republics, Russia, and European markets. We also intend to have 2 more new corridors via Afghanistan. One from Kohat to Karachi, that is the line, that missing link which we are doing, but from Karachi border all the way to Mazar-e-Sharif, and that would connect us to the Central Asian republics. Second connectivity we are looking at via Torgundi in Afghanistan, a border between Turkmenistan and Afghanistan, and bringing that track via Chaman. So these are 2 new connectivities on which we are working with the Central Asian republics of Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan. All these corridors facilitate trades, regional trades, and if we have those huge volumes of trades coming, so railway is the only mode of transportation which can offer a lot of value in terms of the transaction cost. So we believe that it would have huge facilitation impact for promotion of regional trade, not only with the European markets, but as well as in the Central Asian markets.
So I want to be clear, these are real problems, but there are also solvable problems in a way that, say, 50 years of being landlocked isn't. The geography is there, the infrastructure is being built. The question is governance and inclusion.
The international environment has changed. You remember India used to be a very close partner of Iran, but after India's policy that favored more Israel rather than the Arab or the Iranians, and therefore we see that Iran will have less space for India to mount any kind of problems for Pakistan. So BLA will not have much space in Iran anymore. I think they will shift lock, stock and barrel into Afghanistan. With Afghanistan also, I think they must be getting this message rather sternly that Pakistan will not take any nuisance from their side, because for 4.5 years they have been shedding Pakistani blood, and that's simply not acceptable. So apart from kinetic actions that Pakistani army has taken in destroying these terrorist holdouts in Afghanistan, we are also, I think, engaged in talking to them bilaterally and multilaterally to persuade them that, look, if you don't sponsor terrorist entities against Pakistan, things will be much better even for your own people. And so I do hope that this message will slowly sink into Afghanistan, the present rulers, Taliban. India also has learned that it cannot defeat Pakistan militarily, but it has unfortunately upscaled its proxy terrorism in Pakistan. Even state operatives are active. So therefore, that problem will always be there until the Modi government changes its mind. But on balance, I believe that Pakistan is now closer to achieving its objectives, provided we give full force behind the political process in Baluchistan, so that every segment is convinced that this government means their welfare and nothing else.
So let me try to explain why all of this matters, not just for Pakistan, but for everyone around the world, especially in this region. Peter Frankopan ends the Silk Roads with this. For most of human history, the center of the world was here, in the Persian Gulf, in the corridors running from the Mediterranean to China, in the markets that built every major civilization on Earth. The last 500 years of Western dominance was the exception, not the rule, and it is ending. What's being built right now is the infrastructure of what comes next. A port at Gwadar giving China, the world's largest trading nation, direct access to the Arabian Sea, Iranian gas flowing to Pakistan, a defense architecture linking Muslim-majority states from Cairo to Islamabad that don't want to be dependent on any single great power anymore. And beyond Afghanistan, if that conflict can be resolved, Central Asia, landlocked countries with enormous resources finally reaching the sea through a Pakistani airport, a gas pipeline from Turkmenistan, a railway to Uzbekistan. So the window is open. Now we just need to see what Pakistan does with this opportunity.